Like, I can get people trying to prove that their pain and their breakups actually feel like something, but using terms like validity and privilege in that statement just sound wrong, you know? But anyways, let me kick things off properly so that we can get into the meat of this entire issue. Welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is Sir Denver B. The show is Raw Zone, and I am going to try and keep it simple like this because we do have a bunch of stuff to talk about and not that much time. Now, while I was scrolling through IG about a week or two ago, I stumbled upon a reel that had been posted up by this lady that I've spoken about before, known as Oloni. Now, of late, she's been doing the best she can to promote her book, The Big O, and everything, so she decides to bring up something that she said was asked to her at a talk show. Now, I'm going to play the clip for you, and then we can get into what it is that was said there, so here it is.
Why do situationships of 3 months hurt more than relationships? Now, I was asked about this in an interview recently, and yes, they can sometimes hurt more than official relationships. But why? And that's because a title and the length of time does not determine the threshold of the pain. Sometimes emotions can be measured by your experiences. When you think of a situationship, they usually develop from something that isn't too serious, something that's physical. There's this rush of dopamine that hits you from all these amazing moments that you spend together. Now, this is just one type of situationship because, of course, there are many. There are situationships which develop from physical intimacy and situationships that develop from actually dating. Now, one reason why a relationship breakup might hurt less is because, who knows, you might have checked out already, perhaps a long time ago. Situationships are still a type of relationship with feelings that have grown and might have developed, but one where no direct closure is allowed because someone doesn't think that they need to have that conversation. Yes, relationship heartbreak hurts regardless of how it ends, but there's almost this respect/privilege that's given to people in relationships because of the understanding of what type of relationship it was. Now, that's not to say it doesn't happen in situationships, but I'm just saying it could happen a bit more, and then I wouldn't get so many dilemmas.
Now, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but this whole talk of, the title and threshold of pain, blah, 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 the privileges because they're in a relationship, blah, 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 it invalidates, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like there's so little that's been said in such a long time that could have been condensed, and it wouldn't even have pinpointed the actual issue, in my opinion at least. Because I feel like there's so much that you can say in such a short time about this that you don't even need to get into all of these words or even bring up the terms privilege or validates. Like, those two things just sound like you're trying to be woke and you're trying to show that your feelings matter to someone or to everyone more so. And I feel like that one's just pointless for the most part, because when you're talking about your pain, it's a pain that came from something that you had with someone else, not with everyone. Not unless if you're talking about people sort of feeling for you because you're in that sort of pain. So if she was answering why it is that people seem to think that my pain shouldn't be more valid because I was in a situationship versus a relationship, then her answer would have made a hell of a lot more sense. But when you're bringing it in the case of someone's personal feelings, then whatever she's saying doesn't even need to carry that much weight. Like, everything she's said is in relation to other people feeling for you, not you feeling it yourself. And the truth of it is, I feel like I can even try and explain this in about 30 seconds or less and just try and keep it simple. And yes, I know I'm probably spoiling the entirety of this episode, but fuck it, I might as well just do it. Then I'll get into the explanation later on. Now, the reason why the pain from a 3-month situationship will hurt more than a relationship, whether of the same time or of longer, is something that primarily comes down to the height of your emotions, the intensity of the kind of emotions that you have. When you're in a situationship, there's a lot of unknown variables and you guys are having a lot of fun, which is something that she mentioned, but I'm kind of getting into why that sort of makes sense. Now, everything is super intense at that point in time. The lust is much higher. The desire is a hell of a lot higher. You guys are having a hell of a lot of fun. And, of course, you're all up in your fields. And so if everything is intense, then the breakup happens. You're going to have a lot of that intense downturn coming back. It's kind of like you taking a super strong drug and then all of a sudden being pulled off of it just as the addictions come in. There's that super withdrawal that comes in. But when you're in a relationship, it's a case of you kind of get in, there's a commitment that's there. There's a hell of a lot that comes in. So there's the honeymoon period that could be there, and then it just sort of slopes off. And of course, by the time you guys are ending the relationship, there's a pretty good chance that you guys are already on the rocks, which is something that she said that I can agree to. And by that point, it doesn't actually feel as bad because you guys are already headed in that direction from the jump. Simple as that. I feel like that one is pretty simple to sort of explain. And to a degree, it doesn't even have anything in the name of which one validates or invalidates another. And the truth of it is, I feel like this whole talking about, privilege in the relationship versus non-privilege, like it's honestly too much, and it feels like you're just trying to be, knowledgeable about something, yet you don't even need all of that. Like, I feel like there's a much simpler way to talk about this without having to bring in terms like privilege. Like, why the hell does, how other people would perceive a relationship versus a situationship really matter to you? Not unless if you care about what other people think about it. And the truth of it is, it's not even about other people. It's about how you feel as a person. And if I was to try and explain the whole thing a little bit further, because at least I have a little bit more time and I'm not trying to make a reel, then I'd probably use a bit of simple math, just to try and make stuff seem a little bit easier for some of us. Because at least with math, it might make a little bit more sense. Now, if you guys remember, if you did math, at least to a certain degree, there was this thing called the number line, which had the positive side and the negative side, and right in the middle was 0, all right? Now, instead of positive and negative, we'll sort of replace those with the emotions that you feel as a person. Now, on the positive side, you can put the happiness emotions, the joy, the lust, the pleasure, the good feelings that you'll have. On the negative side, you can have hurt, pain, fear, guilt, and all the other negative shit. Now, interestingly enough, you can sort of use the same exact example to sort of try and explain BDSM to a degree, but I'll try and stick to the topic at hand for the time being. So when you look at how the typical human being is, assuming that this is a person who's genuinely a happy person. So you have them on the positive 1, 2 side, and that's kind of where they are in their normal state on an everyday basis. If they get sad, it can go down, but it'll come back up to that positive 1, 2 side. So they end up with this person that they really like. Say it's a crush, say they've always been interested in them, say they've been having the biggest dry spell, and all the other previous things I've mentioned sort of come in. This is the crush, they've really been interested in them and shit. And they start having a thing. So they're gonna be having this high for a while because the feelings are super intense. They're both really into each other. They probably want to shag and they end up shagging quite a bit. And, there's these bonds that are sort of being formed, even though there's nothing, set in stone in the name of commitment. Everything's super intense. So you can sort of mark both number lines and say that they both go up to 10. So this guy is feeling something all the way up to an 8. And at some point after about 3 months, him and the babe sort of have a disagreement, and Shorty decides to end things completely, or Dude decides to end things completely, and one of them feels like absolute shit. Now, all of that pain goes down to, say, a number 4, a number 5, right? It's nothing too catastrophic. So you think about the distance that's been traveled from the 8 all the way to the 0, then to the 5, that's 13 positions, all right? Now, look at someone who's in a relationship. They go ahead, they have a thing for a bit, they get into a relationship. Even though it would have gone all the way up to an 8, it drops back down to a 5 or like to a 4 or 3, assuming that this guy is super into the babe, or the babe is super into the guy, and they're together, and they kind of enjoy it and everything. But they start having issues and it starts to drop down. It moves from that 4 or a 3 down to a 2, then to a 1. And then at some point, someone decides to end the relationship, and then they're dropped down to a 5, assuming that they're going back to the same exact level of a 5. Even though they were at a 2, at a positive 2, and they were taken down to a negative 5, they've moved 7 positions as opposed to 13. All right. Now, to bring the math back into the mix, because you're moving in the negative direction, all of those points are a minus. So now, considering that the minus side is like the pain side, the hurt side, now, when you consider someone having a minus 7 in terms of hurt versus someone having a minus 13, who do you think is going to feel worse? Isn't it the person with minus 13, because they have more pain in that entire feeling range? And that's kind of how the entire situationship versus relationship pain works. The difference is, guys who are in relationships might actually end up feeling pain, even though it's not as much, but it might actually be deeper pain because they have memories that they've created together, especially people who've been in relationships for a fairly long time. Because the memories that you guys have together have sort of, planted roots in you as the both of you. And the fact that, the bond that you guys had, which created all of those memories, has been broken, it kind of ends up hurting a little bit deeper. Now, in the case of the situationship, it's a case of the pain being there, but it just being more intense. It might actually end up fading a lot faster than the relationship's pain because it's not as deep, but the feeling of pain might actually feel like it's deeper from a relationship. Although, then again, I might be wrong about this shit, but either way, let me just conclude by saying this. Stop overcomplicating simple shit. Half of the problems that you're actually trying to sort of solve, that you're sort of overcomplicating to a huge degree, you could have solved it with a little bit of introspection, maybe some communication, and actually just trying to look at the root cause, not trying to look at it and base it off of some shit like privilege or some other overcomplicated thing that has nothing to do with relationships. Trust me, most of these problems require a little bit of introspection, a little bit of communication, quite some observation, but at the end of it, you'll have your answer right there. Although, then again, I might be wrong about this shit, considering that I literally thought through this for 3 minutes and I came up with the answer. So I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on Facebook, on IG, it is at Breaktime on Westside, on Twitter. It is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.